just racing. What happened 10 years ago to this team was a real-life, unthinkable tragedy. 10 members of the Hendrick Racing family were killed when a team plane crashed. A lesser organization may have folded, but under the leadership of Rick Hendrick, they forged on and grew even stronger. Jimmy Johnson won the Martinsville race that day, and he reflects on a day he will never forget.
That morning, it certainly had that fog that you see in Martinsville. It was so thick at times, like, we're gonna get the race off on time. We need this fog to lift in order for the spotters to see. As the race was going on, I had no idea. Chad and the crew guys, they could tell that a few of our executives from Hendrick Motorsports behind the scenes of the pit area, that something was up. Within 20 or 30 seconds of taking the finish line, I'm notified, can't celebrate. They want all 4 Hendrick cars on pit lane parked together. And as I pull up, I could see police officers surrounding our race cars. Getting out of the race car, making eye contact with my publicist, her eyes were swollen shut, and just see on her face something really bad had happened. They took all 4 Hendrick drivers back behind the media center, and then Ken Howes is the one that broke news to us that the plane was missing.
The FAA reported they lost contact with a Hendrick Motorsports airplane.
There was confusion as to who really was on the aircraft. My wife was living in New York at the time. She was to fly and be on that airplane that day. Her mom came to visit her, and her mom got sick. She decided to stay with her mom. The original manifest of who was on the aircraft had my wife's name on it. I guess we all maybe had a little hope it was just missing and that they safely landed somewhere and everything was fine. But you could tell that there was a pretty strong feeling there were no survivors. We left the racetrack and went to see Rick and Linda. And I don't even remember what we said. I don't even think we could talk. Just in total disbelief. It's just daunting when you think of 10 people and how many lives that affects. Children, the spouses, friends, colleagues, you just try to understand why, and you sometimes never get that answer. My faith was certainly tested to its ultimate. We're almost out of tears. I mean, you'd still cry, but nothing really happened. The only thing that kind of steered the ship for all of us in the right direction was, we've got to go to the racetrack, we've got to go to work. Although none of us wanted to, it was the last thing we wanted to do was go down to Atlanta and go check in and put the cars through tech and get them on the racetrack. We went to work and had a fast race car, a great race, driving the car into the corner so hard in those closing laps to get by them that the chassis is bottoming out on the ground and sparks are flying. The tires are rubbing on the fenders and smoking.
Johnson trying to do something special for all the people at Hendrick Motorsports and take the family to victory lane.
I'll never forget coming back to the finish line to get the checkered flag. Usually people are kind of leaving the stands and heading out, but everyone was still there. I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it. Didn't change anything. It can't. Hopefully it put a smile on some families' faces that were grieving pretty heavily. I know it put a smile on our faces at the track. But it definitely is a moment in time that I'll never forget. The individuals we lost on that airplane, many of them had a lot to do with my success today, because they believed in me before I ever knew it or knew of them or understood why. Randy Dorton was a huge part of me maturing as a driver, and Scott Latham, Jeff Turner, John Hendrick, his beautiful daughters, Dick and Liz I knew, Joe and his smiling face at the racetrack all the time. They're just great friends, and Ricky's the reason I'm here. Ricky believed in me so much that behind the scenes was really making things happen for me to get a job at Hendrick Motorsports.
No, we got it, baby. We got it. I love you to death. Thank you so much for everything.
Little Ricky loved to wear his hat backwards, and his dad wasn't a big fan of it. We naturally, in Victory Lane, just put our hats on backwards. And from that moment on, we always grab a pic with the hats on backwards pointed up, just to give a little shout out to Ricky and really everybody on the aircraft. So as I point to the sky and wear the hat backwards, I just smile and think, buddy, I wish you were here to enjoy this. Hope you're looking down and smiling from upstairs. I definitely take that moment and pause and think of them all.
Boy, what a day that was, and for that to be 10 years ago, and for what that organization has done since then, I think is a statement about the leadership of Rick Hendrick. If you look at what he did for that organization, I mean, here was the man probably grieving the most. He was the guy who stepped up and brought that whole organization together to go on, to forge on, like Jimmy said.
Johnny, it's good to be remembered. I enjoyed that piece. It was 10 years ago, and in my opinion, Jeff, you have to move on. Terrible tragedy, but what they did is, when I look at it, they took sadness and created strength, and went on and won that race at Atlanta, and here Rick Hendrick is still leading the ship.
Yeah, and the thing is right now, Rick is such an inspiration in so many different ways when it comes to that, because everybody on that airplane, they were friends of mine, and when I see a piece like that, I mean, I hurt, because I miss them. I miss every one of them, and it's one of those days that we'll never forget. I mean, and the racing community as a whole will never forget that moment, because it slapped every one of us in the face some way or another. And I'm glad that we're able to kind of like have people like Rick Hendrick that can tell us you can overcome if you believe, if you have faith. And I think that's one of the greatest things about that man and that whole organization. They have faith.
Yes, and here they are 10 years later, as strong as ever. And they have Jeff Gordon running for the championship right now, and certainly a lot of hungry drivers that want to go out there in honor of those people and win today. They have that always in their heart sticker along for the ride, and a lot more inside that race car as they race at Martinsville today. The countdown continues under 2 hours before the green flag, and we still have a lot more race day coming your way. Denny Hamlin won this race.